Hello, so welcome to this video for COMP3218, Game Design and Development at the University of Southampton. My name's Dave Millard, I'm one of the lecturers on the course, and I'm here with...
Adrian Chapman, another lecturer on the course.
And Tom Blount, another lecturer on the course.
Brilliant. So Tom, can you just say a little bit about what we asked the students to do for this coursework?
Absolutely. So this coursework was all about storytelling in games. So we asked the students to make a small game prototype with a story engine. So where the gameplay affected the story and where the story affected the gameplay.
Brilliant. Okay, well, let's get on and have a look at our very first game, which is called Cabin Fever.
Okay. What do we look like?
I'm the one on the left.
One on the left?
Let's do the one on the left.
Okay. I'll just type my name because I can spell my name. There we go. Do you prefer order or chaos? Ooh, I like this kind of character creation thing. It's like very ambiguous.
Yeah, and then you sit there looking and saying, do I like order or chaos?
I do. I've had an existential crisis just now looking at this game.
Something bad happens. How do you move past it? I'm just going to start. Yeah. I'm going to start clicking stuff at random, or I'm going to put too much thought into the.
Quickly.
Do you prefer sweet food?
Sweet. Sweet.
Do you like a challenge? Yeah, sure. Did I just inadvertently select the difficulty level there? Do you prefer stay in one place or move about? Stay. Would you rather reincarnate as a cat or a dog?
Oh, that's difficult.
Okay. We've been together as a group for a while now, but we're running out of resources. I think this cabin needs to get more organised. Let's elect a leader.
Okay. That sounds like a good idea. I agree. What do you think, John? That makes sense. Okay. So, I have to just a comment. This art style is fabulous. Really, really nice. I have a few rounds of voting. Everyone point to the person you would like to be the leader. Okay. Can we vote for ourselves?
No.
No. Oh. Gather around a circle. Okay. And point. Close your eyes.
How do we know if everyone had their eyes closed?
What do you say?
Sure.
Ah, that looks like a bit of a false choice there.
Yeah. That's some nice music. Day 4. That's quite a nice tutorial as well. Just overlaying different interface bits.
Tick the boxes to mark tasks you've completed.
As nice as the music is, I'm just going to lower it a little bit.
Marking the final box finish planning will advance you through to the next day. Okay. Use this clipboard to make decisions for today. So this is presumably a resource management game.
Yeah.
So we've got to allocate tasks, allocate food, manage the fireplace, and then finish planning. Okay.
Okay, so we've
Day
got
4.
Wood, raw food, and okay.
So
yesterday, tasks, food, fireplace. We've got a bunch of people. They have a bunch of different. This is very much my kind of game. I'm just saying.
Yes.
So we've got to allocate tasks.
I love the little thing. It's feeling hopeful and fresh. Gosh, I can't remember the last time I felt hopeful and fresh.
It's been a long 24 months.
There we go. So is this the tasks tab?
This is the tasks tab, yeah.
Right. Oh, okay. So
I'll do the cooking. How's
can
that?
you okay, so you drag them up.
Who gets to play?
Chad can.
If you hover over the tasks, do they tell you anything about what they do?
Yeah, so
okay. So we got
although
hunt.
They're slightly wrong. Woodcutting allows you to gain wood. Hunting allows you to get food.
Okay, yeah.
Small amount of food. Rest lets you recuperate. Play lets you improve their hope, and then cooking turns the raw food into normal food. Okay.
Normal cooked food. Okay. And then what's the food tab?
Hang on a minute.
Oh, you just allocate them around.
Yeah.
And they've all got different chances of success at things.
They do, and I don't know what whether. No. So, for example, John has a 44% chance when hunting, whereas Jane has a 68%. I don't know if that's like inherently.
Yeah.
Better one.
Oh, it does tell you underneath. Has a 50% chance of getting 2 food. Okay. All right.
There you go. Everyone's got a job now. Food.
Okay, and then allocate food to your group. It's like proper micromanagement. Okay. We'll be satisfied after this meal. We'll be stuffed after. Hang on, but he's not having anything.
Well, I've just dragged the cooked food to him. But yeah, they're all satisfied after. Ooh.
Oh, I suppose. Oh, because they're already full. That's why.
In which case, no food.
They don't need any food. Yeah. Okay, and then manage the fireplace. Okay. Allocate wood. This will make the cabin warm. Okay.
I'll just stick with 1 for now.
Yeah. Oh, I like that the flame gets bigger as well, depending on how much you have.
Alright, let's finish.
And it's a lovely little effect around it as well. And I love it, these transitions. They're very cute. Go, day 5. Here we go. So what's the state? So yesterday. Okay. So we've...
Okay, so we turned a lot of raw food into cooked food. But we technically had a deficit of raw food.
Yeah.
Alright.
Okay.
Cabin's warm.
Everyone's tired now, apart from Tom.
So, what am I good at? I'm good at wood cutting. Not very good at hunting.
Yeah.
Okay.
We haven't really got much into the narrative bits yet, but we could probably have a go at doing the thinking about the presentation and how that's working. So what do we think about the presentation? That's basically the graphics, audio, and information design.
I think it's at least an excellent. Like, the information's really clearly shown. The graphics are brilliant. The music is sweet.
Yeah. There's a nice little rustle when you change tabs as well. I don't seem to be able to reallocate tasks though.
I'm not quite sure why Chad and Stacey are in different styles than everyone else. That's a bit but I'm feeling hard to I find it hard to be grumpy about it because I think they look great.
Yeah.
And it's just so nicely put together. The aesthetics really, really well thought through. There are some odd things like the fact that you've got the notepad to record what you've done, but that's not actually linked to actually what you have done, right?
Yeah, you have to tick it manually.
You have to sort of manually, and that's kind of okay, but kind of that seems a bit peculiar. But the iconography is all really straightforward, isn't it? The information design works. It's complex to take it all in, but then I guess that's the point. I mean, even things like this with the fire getting bigger and like the little glow around the fire so you can see the bricks behind it.
Aha. So we have our first little random narrative event as well.
Here we go.
How about
we have some kind of celebration?
Yeah, let's do it. So we can have a bonfire, a banquet, or a barbecue. So I would guess this is use up wood, use up cooked food, or use up raw food.
Raw food, yes.
And wood, because for the barbecue you'll need wood and that, right?
Yeah, probably.
We've got plenty of food, haven't we? Cooked food. So let's have a banquet.
Well, I just gave everyone 2 cooked meals.
Well, they're very happy.
So this feels like a waste now, but...
So, there we go. Do we get any... I love this scene. The guy on the right's hilarious.
Oh, okay. Collect 100 food. Oh, okay. This is not what I was expecting. So now we have to collect 100 food for day 10.
Ah, okay. Food. Oh, blimey. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So we've got a task now, and we may fail at that task. Okay. So, all right, Tom, while you were thinking about how to collect 100 food, so information design, there's a lot of information, but they've done a nice job of putting it all up there. So a good would be, all key information is shown. An excellent would be all the information is shown clearly. And prizeworthy would be it's novel as well as clear. It's certainly shown, I think. Is it shown clearly?
I feel that it is shown clearly in this case. Everything's there when you need it.
Yes, there are a couple of things, like for example here, when I'm allocating jobs, it would be nice to know who's tired. Because I was having to flick here to go, okay, so Chad's exhausted, Chad deserves a rest, come back to here, give him the rest, now who else needed a rest, and sort of. So, but other than that, everything is, seems very clear.
And you've got actually knowing what you're doing, you have to go and look at the food and the fireplace to figure out what you've got, right?
Speaking of another thing that I've just realised, it said it was the 6th day of summer, and so I don't need to light a fire, I don't think, because it's already warm. So I've been wasting wood. Oh no.
Well, making it nice and warm. So okay, so I think that the information design is excellent. Arguably, the graphics and audio at the same level, right? Consistent, effective, appealing graphics, complementary and appealing effects and music.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very pretty and very polished.
Yep.
And looking at just that kind of background drawing, you'd say, oh well, it's not very good art. It's just some squiggles. But the thing is, it's so stylized and well polished and everything that it really, really, really works.
And I would even argue that even though Chad has a slightly different style, the distinctiveness, it adds a bit of humor. I'm going to totally go that was intentional, and I enjoy it.
Yeah. Not quite sure why Chad lounges around the cabin naked, but there you go. It's that kind of group of friends.
That's right.
I would argue, so prizeworthy for graphics would be thematically resonant graphics. And I'm not quite convinced that they pulled that off, but some parts of it they have. So things like the transitions, right? The kind of the way in which they bring up the picture of the cabin with all the friends in it before they bring up the notepad and the clipboard. So I think actually on the graphics front it might even be halfway to prizeworthy. I think
I'm happy with that. I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And we haven't said anything about the audio, but there's obviously a nice audio track. So I think the audio is complementary and appealing, which is at the excellent level. But are there any sound effects?
There are sort of UI clicks, I guess, if you like. So when I sort of click through the buttons, when I'm shuffling the papers in the different tasks and things. Also, this isn't true. I am feeding everyone. I'm just not feeding them very much. Ooh, drama.
Yeah.
Guess who's not getting fed tomorrow?
Things will get better, I promise. We should get rid of the old man. He smells and he's useless.
So I think this is one of the key story points.
Do we banish the old man? Banish Stacey, or just what? Okay. Well, I mean, Stacey's a bit mean, but let's not throw her out just for.
All right.
Saying no.
This is giving me flashbacks to This War of Mine.
Right. Yes.
It's it feels like one of those games where trying to make sure everyone is fed is just going to end in disaster.
Yeah. You're supposed to be working. You've got 2 days to get up to 100 food.
And that's the thing. They all eat more than 2 food a day. So I'm not quite sure how I'm meant to get there.
Do you have to give them food?
Well, I mean, they complain if I don't.
They're already complaining.
Right.
And the thing is, so I'm also trying to. They're all still exhausted.
They need to rest.
Exhausted and hopeless. They rested for the last day.
Wow,
Tom, you are a taskmaster. No food. They rested already.
They're getting 2 meals a day. What more do you want? We're specifically ordering Chad to go and play, and he's still feeling hopeless.
I'm waiting for Stacey to come to you with a proposal for a 4-day working week.
Oh no, they've unionised. Oh, and see, because everyone is exhausted, their chance to do everything has gone down, so I have to keep letting them rest, I guess. But that means I've just, absolutely gonna run out of food.
Can you give them... Yeah, okay. Alright. Perhaps, well... I say if you got rid of the old man, but you'd have one less to feed, but then you'd have one less to do something.
That's true, although I don't think he's very good at doing anything. It's also autumn now, so I guess it's going to be getting colder.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get to this banquet. See, everyone's still hopeless and tired and fatigued and exhausted.
Yeah, something funny's going on there, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether that's working properly.
Does feel like it's a bit unbalanced, if nothing else, but maybe that's by design. But it definitely feels frustrating when they've been resting for 3 days and are still fatigued.
Right.
Because then if I say, okay, you've got to push through it and work through it, then you have a much lower chance of actually succeeding any of the tasks. So I just end up wasting a day if I do that. So yeah, speaking of mechanics and stuff.
Yeah, so I guess this is about meaningful play, which is sort of where the conversation had got to anyway, hadn't it? So this is mechanics, controls, and any bugs. So I guess what we're looking for is a kind of well, what would good be? Good would be complementary mechanics, a reasonable set of smooth and usable controls, and game is reasonably complex with only infrequent minor bugs. Right, so what do you think about the mechanics? What do we got? We've got...
So we have managing hunger, hopelessness, and tiredness. We have a number of different resources to try and do it.
Yep, and warmth as well.
And warmth. Cabin's still warm. We've got 6 different tasks that all have different effects. Each person has different capabilities and things like that. It feels like quite a complex set of mechanics, to be honest.
It's complex. I mean, and especially given what you said, it makes you wonder about how well they've managed to balance them. It's quite hard to do when you've got a lot of stuff going on.
During that discussion, it felt like the music both changed and the volume changed. Did something happen in there while I was focused on the conversation? Did something happen in autumn here?
Well, I think something's happening now, but I don't know if anything happened beforehand.
Okay, sorry. We were focused on the conversation, and suddenly I realized that music had reached a crescendo. Oh, it's over.
You to leave. Will you go quiet? Your head is bagged. Oh dear. I think the union's turned on you. No.
Ow.
Oh dear. Nothing but your clothes. Okay.
On the other hand, I've got a cabin to myself, apparently.
Banished. They elected a new leader.
I feel like they could have had the election without hitting me over the head.
Yeah. Also, Phil, I mean, I suppose it was giving you information, right? So you had kind of the feedback that everyone was hopeless and tired.
I mean, but I had no way.
It didn't warn you that was coming. Well, let's think about this. So mechanics, I think we've got so excellent is a wide set of complementary mechanics, right? I think. And good would be a set of complementary mechanics. We've definitely got a set of complementary mechanics, right? There's a complex set of stuff going on. Do we have a wide set?
I would say probably yes.
I think so as well.
we've kind of got the multiple types of resources that we're managing, haven't we, in different ways.
Yeah, and you've also got different people's personalities, not personalities, but what they're good at, bad at, their emotions. Yeah.
I will say that's maybe the one downside to this art style is you don't necessarily get a sense that the others are distinct. So we have like Old Man, Stacy, and Chad are all very distinct. The other two are kind of just there, I guess.
Yeah. So what about the controls? So you've got the obviously you're doing a lot of clicking on buttons. You've got a bit of drag and drop going on. You've got multiple tabs.
Yeah, like it's a fairly standard, I guess, sort of UI type based game. So controls wise, there's not really a lot to go wrong. Like it all feels quite good. I definitely had some problem assigning tasks at one point, but then I didn't have that problem again, so I don't know what happened there. But yeah. So
good would be a reasonable set of smooth, usable controls, and it goes up to excellent if they're intuitive.
I mean, they are intuitive because it's just like dragging things to people. Yeah. So and bugs. Have we noticed any bugs? We've got some very minor stuff like the hover text was wrong for one thing, but otherwise it seems to be working pretty well.
It does.
Yeah, definitely seems to be.
So, and I think it's complex.
I do too.
So, game is reasonably complex with no obvious bugs would be excellent. Infrequent minor bugs would be good. I know they've got. It's such a minor point to have the wrong hover text on something. I kind of feel it's not in the behaviour, so I think that's probably an excellent as well.
I agree. I wouldn't want to mark them down for that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now we get into the kind of the brief side of this, right? What we asked them to do, which was essentially to create a game with a story engine and have some interesting agency going on. And with the story engine, we were asking them to make sure that you had two things, right? You had a way in which the game influences what happens in the story, and ways in which the story influences what's happening in the game. So they've, in their game notes, they've made a statement about both of those things. But I just wondered, what's your perception of those two things, having played it? What do you reckon's going on?
So the resources that you give to various people will change their ability. So the more they eat, I'm assuming the more they'll be able to chop wood, and the happier they'll be, the less likely to hit you over the head.
Yeah. So I guess their emotional state is the game affecting the narrative, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I would assume that some of these events that happen are directly linked to the mechanics that I'm using. So whether I've fed everyone, whether the place is too cold, whatever.
Yeah.
Going the other way, which would be, I guess, the story impacting the gameplay. It doesn't feel like the gameplay particularly changes, other than I assume if I banish somebody, then I've got one less mouth to feed. So I guess that is a story choice that then affects the gameplay, because then I'm having to sort of balance or rebalance the resources I've got.
Yeah.
But it's more... Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily change the gameplay.
So in terms of the game world impacting the narrative, what they've said is that yes, it's about how you fed them, what their state is, and the ending is dependent on how well you've managed the cabin effectively, if everyone's prospered. And the other way around, they're talking about how this is the narrative impacting the game world. They're saying that the biggest example of that would be the banishing, right? So you can make decisions to banish somebody, and then obviously they're removed from the game and no longer affect the game. So you have got, you've got less agents, as it were, but then you've got less mouths to feed, right? And they said some narrative events require certain characters remain a part of the crew, so actions have consequences further down the line if you remove a character. So I think there are definitely examples of it going both ways.
See, I got this event again And I'm pretty sure that I am feeding everyone, though, which I don't know if that suggests that maybe there's some flaw in their story engine, but...
Oh yeah, you had that problem before, didn't you, with the tiredness thing as well?
No, same event. So maybe that's just an event that happens regardless, but...
Okay. So we're kicking him out?
No, we're giving him a hug. Although I might
You didn't kick him.
I might kick Stacey out just to see what happens.
Yeah, she's a troublemaker.
I'm curious, if I fed everyone 3 meals a day, would that avoid that event totally? Or is that just a, we want to move the plot along event?
Yeah, they're still feeling hopeless and fatigued.
Yeah, which is a shame, because I definitely made you... Alright, everyone gets to play today. Except
so let's see if they stop feeling hopeless, right? Apart from Tom.
Cooking is rejuvenating, it'll be fine.
Okay. I give him loads of food. Apart from Tom. It's taking one for the team, it's fine.
I'll just eat the raw food. Actually, that's a point. Is the... Okay, the raw food seems to give you enough hunger back as the other one. But I guess raw food makes more cooked food if you cook it. I don't know.
Go on then. Let's see what happens. Okay.
Let's get rid of Stacey. You will regret this.
I'm enjoying our decision already. Okay. So the music's changed, right? Now we're in autumn.
Nobody seems upset. If anything, they all look happier. I feel like we made the right choice.
Oh, they're all feeling hopeful.
Now, is that because I told them all to play, or because we kicked out Stacey?
Oh, that's true. Difficult to know.
Nobody likes Stacey.
So what I'm struggling to get from this is So I think there's definitely cases where the story's affecting gameplay, and there's definitely cases where gameplay's affecting story. So the difference between kind of a good and an excellent for this would be a good means there's a number of times where this happens. An excellent would be this kind of consistent interplay between the game world and the story, including important impacts. So I'm trying to figure out the extent to which those two things are connected.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely the opportunity for them to be connected quite consistently and tightly. But it's hard to see whether or not the engine is actually doing that.
What? Just as a slight aside, which fable is this? I'm really struggling with this one. It's been preying on my mind now.
I would assume the ant and the grasshopper, just because it's going to be winter soon.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's all about kind of
preparing.
Preparing, isn't it? I suppose.
Rather than resting and playing.
Yes. Who's the grasshopper?
Yeah. So I'm also having a look at the game notes because they've got a narrative structure in there. So it looks like they've got a couple of key things. So you've got the celebration, where you've got multiple goals, and then it carries on, and then you get the complaint about the old man being lazy. So these look like they're possibly fixed.
Interesting. So yeah, definitely it seems to be hammering home that grasshopper thing. So winter was just a story. Winter is coming.
Okay, so you've got events that can follow depending on whether you've got Stacey or the old man, essentially. And then you have another event with Chad. Okay, so it looks like there's some fixed events. they sort of implied that they had other events that would just trigger depending on the state of things, but perhaps it's a bit more structured than I thought it was. So I think I don't think they've got this consistent interplay between the game world and the story, right? Oh, here we go. We've got the radio bit. Oh. So, what happened with the radio?
He just said he'd listen to it and let us know if he heard anything, I guess.
Okay, he'll come back to us. Yeah, so I'm wondering whether or not... So there's definitely an interplay. I think it's definitely at the good level, right?
Mm-hmm.
They go in both directions. But is it consistent?
Also, if everyone has been doing nothing but resting and they're still tired, it feels like that might be...
You think that's a bug?
Could be. Or it's just not doing as much as I'd expect it to. Wait, and I think I'll talk about this in a second when we start talking about the theme.
Yeah. So I think that for the story engine, I think it's a good.
Yes.
And I think the reason I'm hesitating is because a game like this gives you all sorts of opportunities to have more random events based on the set of variables that's the state of the game. Because you could have other types of events come up. But it looks to me like there's a consistent set of events, like a network of events they've gone for. So, which is fine, and it works. But
yeah, I think I'd agree that falls under a good.
I'm waiting for the old man. Everyone, you heard on the radio that winter is coming. There is some confusion. Winter is real. So, the problem with that is that as players,
yeah, that's
as players, we know that winter is real, right? So it's not really a surprise to us, right?
That is true, but I guess it's kind of a nice bit of world building that they don't know it.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about sorry, go on.
I don't think I'm going to get 100 wood and 100 food in 3 days.
I don't think you're going to get 100 of anything.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what they're doing when they're playtesting it to manage to get that many. I mean, if you just literally just got everyone go out and chop wood, and just said, right, it's wood week. What happens? Because you only get 4 wood. So even if you had 6 people, and they all went out and chopped wood, and they were all successful, that's only 24 wood, isn't it?
And everyone's like, even just keeping like 5 people fed has burned through all of my food.
Yeah.
So I did say at the start I like games like this, but also I am quite bad at them, so it could just be that.
I'm wondering whether we're making assumptions about how often they need to be fed and things.
Yeah.
But a bit like you did with the wood. Although they did get pretty hopeless and frustrated with you the first time round, didn't they?
They did a bit.
Yeah. If that bloke put some clothes on, he might find himself a bit warmer.
So where are we next on the mark scheme?
So we're talking about agency. So this is how rich is the structure, and what about the quality of the choices? So just to give an example, so good here would be that we have several branching points and some interesting choices and attempts to manage player agency.
Oh no, I think it's crashed.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Oh, that's a real shame. I'll give it a second.
So,
but yeah, so I'm still kind of perplexed about all those questions at the start. Do they mention that at all in their game notes? Like, did any of those choices have an effect on anything? Or was it just a bit of sort of introductory sort of false agency? And
yeah, that's an interesting question. I can't see anything in here. that says about how those affect things. Certainly the structures. So the first decision is the old man suggests a celebration, and that just gives you a different challenge, right? The second decision is Stacy complaining about the old man, in which case you can banish Stacy, do nothing, or banish the old man. If the old man's in the group, he then tells you about winter. Finds a radio. If Stacy's in the group, you get to a point where she refuses to work and complains about the old man being lazy again. Then you get Chad leaves the cabin due to personal reasons. And then you get the cold snap, and then it completes and you get the start of summer. So there seems to be like a fairly standard set of things that get given to you, and none of them seem to depend on the... So what I thought was going on in this game was I thought that you had a set of variables in the engine, right? You've got all the resources that are changing as you actually play the game, and then you've got your answers to these questions at the beginning, right? And then I thought there was a set of events that they had pre-programmed, and what it would do is it would at certain points in the game, it would look to say, given this set of variables and the answers you gave, which of these events could fire? And then it picks one at random, right? That's what I thought it was doing. So every time you play, you'd get a different set of events. Your choices all matter. You get lots of variety. But that's not what it's doing, right? It's asking you the questions at the beginning, as far as I can tell, just to kind of to set the scene. And then the same events always happen, right?
Yeah.
But you also get kind of game events triggered by not having enough food and wood, presumably, right? I think we've only seen the food one, right? When you ran out of food and they threw you out.
Yeah.
So it's a lot simpler than it appears to be initially, I think. That said, it does still work, right? And it still hits all the things we asked them to do. So, we do have several branching points, right? And we do have attempts to manage player agency, because if no matter whether you banish the old man or Stacy or keep both in, it still manages to carry on. It adapts the text according to whether they're present, and it goes to the next event.
And there's background screen as well.
Yeah. So, but it's fairly limited, I think. So I think in terms of the brief, in terms of the narrative, they're probably at the good level.
Yes.
Okay, so that gets us onto the kind of design. So that's essentially the techniques and the pacing. The techniques, which is pacing and poetics, right? So do the narrative and gameplay complement each other? Have they got nice pacing through the story? Have they used multiple writing techniques? What do you think?
So in terms of the techniques, we've got the different sort of like events and sort of cutscene like bits. We have the sort of dialogue trees. Slightly generous to call it a tree, perhaps, if it's just one choice every thing. But
yeah.
So I would say a number of different techniques. The pacing sort of mechanically at least sort of gets harder, presumably, as you sort of get to winter and you need more wood, both for cooking and
the pressure mounts, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And also you get the the events become I guess more dramatic.
Yeah, although... like the revelation that winter actually is coming.
Yeah. Although again, it feels like they could have done more. I was half expecting sort of some of the relationships between these characters to be revealed, or for them to be some dramatic event, like we discover John dead, something like that.
Like when Chad leaves for personal reasons, is it just he says, I have to go back to my home planet now, goodbye?
Yeah. So I suppose the way to think about this is, when was the last time you were watching a drama series and a character said, I must leave now for personal reasons, without explaining themselves, and you never find out why, right? It's like, you need to use use those things to build the drama. So we've got the use of more than one game writing techniques. That's the good level. We've got ascending pacing. Do we have a clear final peak, do you think?
I haven't been able to get there, is the problem. I would assume... Well, you have a clear epilogue if you get through winter and you get through it. I don't know if there's like a particular moment in... I guess the whole of winter arriving is your final peak.
Yeah, so I've got the chart here, and essentially what happens is that you get past the whole stuff with Stacy and the old man, then you get to Chad leaving, and then the cold snap happens, and you can't perform actions outside, and then you win if you survive to the start of the summer, right? Okay. So essentially you have to stock up to make your way through the winter.
So a little bit of Frostpunk there as well.
Yeah, basically.
Chad, I've made Chad sad. I feel really bad now.
So I'm not sure there is a final peak really. There's no dramatic actions that happen in the final stage that they've written about, and none that we've seen.
I would say there is, to an extent. Like the fact that suddenly you can't do any of the things outside is kind of like, for example, in Frostpunk, for example, that is the dramatic peak of the campaign.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think it's sort of verging towards it, even if, like you say, it's not a dramatic climax in a single moment.
We're definitely ascending towards winter and its implications, and that's where it falls apart. It's the implications as opposed to something big happening.
Yeah. So so maybe about halfway between the two. The poetics. So this is about whether narrative and gameplay complement one another.
Oh no.
Chad leaves.
Okay, so if you throw out the old man, Chad also leaves. I guess that's the...
No, Chad always leaves, according to this.
Oh, okay. Because he didn't, at this point... and he's still there.
Oh yeah.
I guess he just left. He just left the conversation. He didn't leave the cabin. Anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
Thematics.
So yeah.
So I mean, on the one hand, mechanically they've kind of got it nailed with you have to prepare for winter, you have to stock up, you have to get all of these resources before the opportunity goes away.
Yeah.
Weirdly, they then kind of undermine it by saying, actually no, it's super important that you have to sleep and play lots.
Yes.
Actually, that said, this time I've deliberately not given them a second to rest and have just said you must keep working, and they seem fine. So maybe that was the moral all along. They're all still very hopeful, even if they're totally exhausted.
Yeah, because at least they're fed, I guess.
And maybe that's it. Yeah.
So. I suppose, yeah. So the theme of the story is about trying to prepare and get through the winter. I think the problem is they haven't made much of it within the story, right? So the characters don't even know that winter's coming, right? We should be starting off with arguments about whether there is a winter or not, right? I mean,
we have very much started in medias res, which is like we start in day 4 and we've all somehow been banished to a cabin. And we, the audience, don't know why that is. Presumably, these people have an understanding of why they're stuck in a cabin together, but we don't. So on the one hand, effective use of that sort of technique starting right in the action, as it were, but you do have to kind of, as you say, like, reveal some of that information to the player, whether it's through them arguing about winter not being real. Because they do that sort of eventually. But...
So I think that the interesting thing here is what we normally say is the story has a point, right? So do the mechanics feed into that point? Does the game feed into that point? What's interesting here is that the point is here. It's here in the gameplay. Stock up and make it through the winter, but it's not really reflected in the story, right? There's a few nods to it. They've obviously had this idea about is winter real or not, right? But yeah, the story doesn't make anything of the fact that you're having to do this. So I think that's why I'm struggling a little bit. So I would say that they, satisfactory would be that they don't, narrative and gameplay don't interfere with one another, right? They definitely don't, right? And I would say that the mechanics have got to do with the theme of the story. So that's probably the good level, right? Which is that they complement each other, and the key mechanics are in keeping with the themes of the story. But I don't necessarily think they support one another and emphasize one another. It doesn't seem to be quite working as well. That's my feeling.
I would say they're maybe halfway between the two, because ultimately all of the mechanics are about, you know, preparing and stockpiling and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just like you say, there's some occasional inconsistencies where we've not been sure, like, oh, should we be resting? Is that helping? Like, if I do just keep preparing and preparing, is everything going to go horribly wrong, kind of thing. But I think it's maybe halfway between the two.
Okay, that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And then the last thing to think about is their feedback. So what they said was, some of the feedback was spreading out the story. So putting narrative decisions and storying throughout the game rather than centralizing it to one section. Doing some environmental storytelling, so the seasons change in the game visually with different colors and snow, atmospheric sounds and music. They cheated dice rolls in the player's favor. So they were told to give the player a slight advantage when we calculate the probability of random events to make them feel lucky and increase their satisfaction. That's interesting. Narrative branching beyond just different game over screens. So they have a dialogue node package to have a bespoke incident system. There's a pool of game objects where each is a dialogue. Oh, so they do that. The conditions for the incident and the conditions to expire that incident and remove it from the pool.
So here, for example, we finally got that event where I've not been feeding everyone, and this is because we actually have run out of food. So, but I guess I needed to keep everyone not just not hungry, but actually stuffed to avoid this event previously, which is why we got it so often. So yeah, so it is somewhat based on the underlying variables.
Okay. And they were also told to balance pacing with agency and theme and ensure the theme stays consistent. So they achieve this by introducing drama in the storyline to raise the tension between characters and introduce events which reflect the fable's poetic when the cabin crew has the chance to either play by consuming their resources in a celebration or work through the autumn to have enough for the future.
Okay. Which is interesting, because I guess I learned very quickly after the first time of doing it that it is better to not bother with that celebration and to just keep...
Yeah. Yeah. But as you said, the fact that they're measuring hopelessness or hope kind of implies that that's an important resource that might actually be worth doing. So some of the things here do seem to have worked, right? So spreading out the story, the environmental storytelling is quite nice. We didn't really talk about that, but we you know, the fact that it does reflect kind of where you are. And the kind of the different events within the story rather than just having different endings. I mean, that's all worked, I think.
Yes.
Quite how well it's worked is perhaps the question, but a good would be feedback has been addressed and changes have been successful, and I think it's there. And the excellent would be that the feedback has been interpreted and addressed. It's less clear that that's the case, so probably I think a good for feedback. Shall we move on to our next game?
Yeah, let's move on. Alright, and our next game is Legend of Brognor.
Let's see what this is about.
There's already some music.
Yeah. Oh.
I decided to just quickly look at the credits. They have different music for the credits menu. Let's jump in and hit start.
Okay. Oh, it's the box cat.
The town is in danger. The only way to save it is to pray to the gods and receive whatever help they give.
Okay.
I want to sacrifice something.
The gods may be more willing to help if I find and present an offering. There are many
luck.
offerings, though, and I'm pretty sure the gods would favour some offerings over others. I know presenting one is not necessary for praying. There may be useful equipment. It feels very... We're being front-loaded a lot of stuff right now.
We are.
This will allow me to find more offerings. Okay, find equipment, more offerings, overcome challenges. So far so good. I can also go back, which is, I guess, is nice. Pray for a blessing now, but I don't know how that would turn out.
Let's try it.
Yeah, that's immediate. Like I can't imagine it will go well, but depending on what I carry, people may treat me differently, which may be able to work to my advantage. If I find I can't progress further for whatever reason, I should come back here and offer whatever I have. I probably made a mistake by not thinking things through, and I'll have to deal with the consequences. Okay, just talk to everyone and figure out what has to be done. Okay, I feel like that last line was probably a nod to which of the fables we're doing.
Yes. Okay. The gods are not and prayers reach deaf ears. Okay.
So, although it said in that opening spiel, you don't have to do this, we do have to do this.
Yeah. The monsters around everything all were slain. So okay. So this is like an end game, basically.
This is you didn't play the game, therefore you lose.
Yeah.
Nice cutscene though.
Yeah, I like the way they delivered it. Actually, that's good. But in terms of structure, always a bad idea to have a dead end early on.
Ooh, hang on. I can't go back, but I think that showed one of the different endings.
Okay.
Okay.
So basically, we go off, we find items, we can either carry on exploring with them, unlocking more stuff, or we come back and offer whatever we've got, right?
So there's noise to the south and west. Somewhat bouncy cat.
Okay. Oh.
Hello.
Stretch cat.
Is there some blood on the bottom too?
Yes. The monster's something eastern path. It's slower than the direct route, but you'll have to deal with the monsters and have the correct key.
We don't have a key. Oh.
Oh, the blood turns into monsters. I see.
Oh, they just animated, have they? So you managed to avoid them.
Yeah, but I don't have any key, so I may just be walking straight to a dead end again.
Okay.
There is a lot of very little.
That is a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, two things.
Oh, look.
So how do you pick stuff up or get stuff?
I assume it is. Is this gently pulsating thing a thing I can talk to?
I think it's a cat.
Someone stole the gem required to open the chest in the next room, so there is no way you can open it unless you find that gem. I may have found the gem.
Okay.
It's hidden in... Okay, so this is probably a different gem, I guess?
Yes.
It's hidden in a maze so that nobody can see it. If you had some way to reveal the unseen, you could find it. You also have to find someone who can open the door. Maybe they're hiding in the same way as that what chest?
The chest in the room that we can't open.
Oh, that we can't see.
Yes.
Can I take this? An electric attack with decent range and okay damage. It will drain the lives of other beings to substantially power itself. Okay.
Okay, let's pick it up.
A sticky substance on the ground opposite the direction of the player's last movement. It doesn't deal damage, but temporarily slows them. The fact that displacement makes fleeing from it. I mean, sure, I'll pick up. Like, why wouldn't I pick it up, you know?
Yeah. The green ring. So this is where you need the key in the ring. You've got these other things.
I don't think it's told me how I actually use either of them, though.
No, do you click on them to...
Okay, if I press 1 or 2, it highlights them.
Okay.
But if I press E... I have to press 1 or 2 and then click.
And they've got a cooldown. So I had a little cooldown effect came up.
Okay, so... Oh. Hello. The monsters are starting to overrun everything. So many people are dead. Was this because I chose to take a longer path? Oh.
So presumably you could go back and make an offering to the gods at this point?
Yes. Ow. That didn't seem as effective as I was hoping. Ow. Alright, you know what? You stay there. I'm gonna...
Because you only have 2 health left now. Oh, is that person dead?
I think everyone's dead, because I took the longer route or something.
Yeah. Did you choose a longer route? I could fit an whole key. So
we need a lot of keys.
So that's the east path over there.
Hang on, I do have something in my hand.
Okay.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, that's confusing.
Okay, I guess it has to be in this slot, maybe? Like I have to have a special
thing. So you're still trying to find the thing.
Why can't I offer this shiny gem that has electricity magic and apparently kills people? Faster to go south to get to the treasure room, but you will have to avoid or kill the monsters. North is longer and is on fire. Speaking of which, the north route also allows you access to the maze if you want to go in there.
Yeah.
I'm in quite a bit of pain. Going to the maze would be unpleasant. No longer. Okay, I guess that's tied to my current health, which is kind of a nice... so we heard a click then, which I assume means because we decided to go north, this door slammed shut behind us for unexplained reasons.
Okay.
It feels like I can see what they're doing there, and making you choose one or the other. But there's no reason in this situation to have to choose one or the other. There's no reason I couldn't do both.
No. Also, am I right in saying you just chose the flaming maze?
I did. There is a lack of flame. So I did choose this maze deliberately because I think when we were talking to them in Expo, they did mention that when they were testing this, they just turned on no clip and went through the entire thing. Which maybe strikes me as poor testing.
Because now because you've got to struggle through this maze every time. Oh, right. It's hard to pull off a maze.
So hang on, so I can't go through these walls, but the monsters can. That seems a bit...
Let's start thinking about the mark scheme.
Oh, and I start with 2 health.
Oh, right, well, you've gone back to there. Was that like a save point?
I guess so. They've got a checkpoint in it, which on the one hand is nice, but on the other hand, if you're just going to put me back to a checkpoint with 2 health, I'm kind of toast. Yeah. Can I use my gem on them? Anyway, yeah. Sorry, mark scheme. Ow.
You're dead.
Alright, let's go to the second store then.
Yeah, presentation, information design, graphics, and audio. What do we think?
Yeah, it's alright. Like, it's a nice tile set.
The key information is there.
Yeah, the health's nice and effective. You can see that. I like the cooldown on the icons. Maybe a little bit hidden down on the icon itself when your attention's focused on the character. But
so here, for example,
the graphics are consistent.
And you've got music and some sound effects. So I mean, in all, I think they've probably hit good.
I agree with that.
On all of those categories, really.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I have just gone through all of that, like monster maze and everything, only to get here and find out that the door is locked and I still don't have the key.
You really can't do much without that old key.
I'm just going to restart this and go a different way.
So, meaningful play, right? Because I'm wondering if it might suffer a little bit here. So this is, the mechanics, the controls, and whether or not any bugs.
So you can pick things up. You can talk to people. You can move around the board.
Yeah. So in fairness, actually, there is a fair set of stuff you can do, isn't there?
Yeah, you can. Some of these things that you pick up have different. I'm gonna sneeze again. I'm so sorry. Never mind. The set of things that you can pick up have different properties. Like there's the electric thing, gem.
Sorry, just to jump in again. So again, sort of talking to them through the development process. This is kind of the absolute key bit of their design, is that once you pick up an item, you can't put it down again. Hence the look before you leap kind of thing.
Oh.
But we managed to pick up a fair number of items without getting this text.
Yes.
So it feels like their level design is...
Yeah.
Perhaps they haven't learned all of the lessons from the first coursework.
Yeah. They needed to put you on more of a railroad to start with, didn't they? To learn some key things.
So we managed to figure it out, but it's interesting that this is sort of like tucked away on one of the paths, and there's no real indication that this is the first place that we should be going to.
But be mindful of the items. The only way I could get them to work was to drain surrounding life force as a power source. Okay.
So this is the other thing. If you actually use those items to help you get the thing you need to offer to the gods, you end up killing everyone anyway.
Also quite useful to know. So is that what the drain is then?
Yeah.
Because it says drain under health, and I did wonder what that was.
So I believe that is how much you've used it, or how many of them you've got, and it. So at a certain value, it just kills everything.
When you picked up that lightning gem, every time you used it, it added a drain?
Oh, it didn't seem to go up and down, but I also didn't manage to kill anything with it, so it might have been that...
You had quite a high level of drain in the last game.
I think it was 17, was it, or something?
Yeah, that's right.
So I've got the old key now, which I think I can either use to open that storeroom, or I can use to open the maze, or I can just give as an offering, for some reason.
Okay. So what happens if you give it? Quality was lacking. Okay, but they still helped you.
But yeah, sorry. So I did sort of jump in and interrupt there. We were talking about meaningful player mechanics, and you're right.
Well,
They do have a number of different mechanics, but I think it's more. Maybe it's down to the information design, or I guess like the tutorializing of it, because it's really not clear how you're meant to use a lot of them. I think.
No, it's quite confusing, isn't it?
I think this is the thing. It's particularly the point of the things we were looking at for in coursework 1, so like the level design and the tutorialization of things is perhaps not...
Yeah. So, okay, so if we look at this, they've got a set of complementary mechanics, right? Arguably, they've got a wide set of complementary mechanics, because they've got a whole bunch of stuff going on. So that would be excellent, a wide set of complementary mechanics. Controls. So good would be a reasonable set of smooth, usable controls.
So the actual movement controls are sort of fine. Do I not? Oh, okay, I thought I could use this key on... I thought this was the storeroom key.
So I think... So yeah, I think you've got a reasonable set of usable controls. I wouldn't say smooth is excellent. Is that they're smooth controls, right? And I'm not getting the impression necessarily that that's the case.
So
particularly watching you stumbling around the maze, for example.
Yeah, using the power ups and some of the movement controls are a little bit.
Yeah. Bugs. Have you seen anything?
Thing that jumped out at me.
Yeah, I think it's kind of yeah, it seems to be working pretty well. So I mean, I think that's a game is reasonably complex and there are no obvious bugs. So okay, so now we get on to the kind of the brief, which is the story engine and agency. So remember, story engine is does the game world affect the story, and does the story affect the game world? And agency is about structure and the choices. But so let's think about the story engine to start with. What are the examples of the story engine and the game world interacting?
So
was our sacrifice denied? I forget what happened when our sacrifice was denied. It wasn't good enough.
Yeah, so the item that we choose to offer up has a dramatic impact on the ending. Is the main and obvious one.
Yeah. And does the story impact the game world?
It depends what you mean by story choices, I guess. Because is it a story choice deciding which of the items to pick up? Because that changes the set of mechanics that you have available to you. But the thing is, it doesn't feel like it's just, oh, I just found a power up and now I'm using it. It's not like I have made a particular story decision to use the green ring.
So reading what their text, they're basically saying, so there are story branches. One example of a branch would be that the west side has 2 paths and the player can take either, locking off the other, right? So one of the things I think they've done is they've confused navigational choices in the level with story choices. And it is true that you can think of it that way. So we talk about simple stories as being navigational stories, where you're making your choices by just deciding where to go, effectively. But the point about those is they don't require a story engine, right? So the story engine isn't a thing that's enabling those choices. The choices that come from the story engine are around events, right, and actions, and those kinds of decisions. So they go on to give you another one. Another branch involves entering a room and being told by an NPC the truth behind the instance of the game, and you're given the choice to take an item and get a unique ending that isn't possible without going down this branch, right? So that is an example of a story engine.
Yeah.
So I think clearly the game world influences the story, as you said, because you get those different endings. But in terms of the story influencing the game world, I suppose in that example you've got a character who's giving you a unique item. But then if that item is for the offering, it actually doesn't have any game world consequences.
Yeah.
The game world consequences are things like everybody being drained because you're using the items, but that's not the story. That's the game system running.
Well, yeah, it's another example of the game affecting the story.
Yeah.
This is.
So I think they've got. And in terms of when the game world impacts the story, it feels like it's mostly the ending.
Yeah.
So I'm just reading what they said about the narrative affects the game world as progressing through different areas can result in changes to the world that affect the player, such as fires that damage them when they walk through it, making other areas more dangerous than they already were. But that's based on your choices within the game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they've got this problem where, on the one hand, they're trying to tell the story through the game. They're trying to make you make decisions by going through different doors and interacting. So they're trying to do a lot of this stuff sort of diegetically in that space. But as a result of that, actually, most of the things they're doing are kind of just game world consequences, right? You go down this passageway and the other one is on fire, right? It's not really a story decision you've made as part of an event, a dramatic event, right? So I think what's going on here is that there are some examples where the game world impacts the story, and that's mainly the ending, right? So that's kind of a sort of satisfactory level. But in terms of the story affecting the game world, all you're really getting is explanations for mechanical things.
Yeah.
Right? So, like that bit where you said, "Oh, everyone, you took too long, everyone's dead," right?
So unfortunately, I think at this point it's feeling very much like the game world to story is at a pass, but the story to game world is possibly less than that.
Yeah, I think kind of. So a pass would be sparse or minor examples where it impacts the story. So I think kind of having you've definitely got some alternative endings, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So I think I think in terms of that, we could probably say that's satisfactory. But
Okay.
but you're right. It's kind of it's on the edge of it. But yeah, you're right about the other one. So story to game world will be sparse or minor examples of where the story impacts the game world. I think it depends whether or not we accept that your choices you make within the game world are, they're not really story choices, though, are they? That's the problem.
They're not. That's the problem.
I think that's like part of it is also the sort of, it goes back to almost the meaningful play aspect of it, in that it's not really clear what the relation between these different items are to the different parts of the world and that kind of thing. It's partly it's either revealed at the wrong place because we're just not told it until too late, or things like for example here there's a thing saying there's a green ring etched on the door and I have a green ring and I don't know if I can get through it, and is that going to impact the story rather?
I guess we'll come on to this with agency, right? Because your agency, I think, is quite limited here. So for story to game world, a pass would be sparse or minor examples, and poor would be some support for story elements of the game, but the story has no real impact on the game world. So is the game world changing at all? So they're saying it's things like the people dying, the fires going on in the maze, the colour of the world changes. So maybe we put it between the two, right? Because they have tried to do it, but they've just not linked it particularly well to story events, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about agency because that's a bit easier to talk about.
Sure.
So this is the structure, how rich it is, essentially, and the quality of the choices that you make.
Yep.
So this is kind of what you were just saying, Tom, wasn't it? About what information you have to make those choices.
Yeah, exactly. Like, for example, walking through one of the doors, immediately locking the other one.
Yeah. So yeah. So what do we got here then? So if we think about the branching points in the story and the places where you make choices, we have to think about how many of those do you think you've got?
And it's difficult to say because I don't always know when I'm making one of these choices, I guess.
So I think obviously the choice they want us to focus on is to pick something up or not, right?
Yeah, so plus the direction, right?
Yes.
So looking at their so it's interesting, looking at their narrative structure, it's basically a network that says if you can go west and do this, go east and do this, or go south and do this, right? With big blocks of text in them, so it kind of shows that they're not really modeling narrative events. They're trying to capture kind of general things you can do in the game. But yes, it's clear that the choices that they think are narrative choices are the mechanical choices of which direction to go in, what items to pick up, right? Now those could also be narrative choices if they led to some sort of narrative element. And they kind of do, right? But it's more about explaining the consequences of what's going on. Yeah. Doesn't help. So in their game notes, they haven't answered the questions we asked them. They've just written a massive load of text. So so trying to pull out what they think about these things is difficult. So okay, well let's think about it. So in terms of the story point, the branching, so really the choice of what items to pick up, all of that's mechanical. The only branching point is when you go to make the offering, and then you get a different result, right? So all the stuff with the items is one branching point. The other branching point is the direction that you go in. And we're kind of arguing about, well, is that a diegetic choice or is it actually a mechanical choice without really any narrative consequences? And it feels like it's possibly the latter.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it feels to me that pass would be some minor branching points, right? And a satisfactory would be some branching points. So
yeah,
there are at least some minors, right?
Well, there are definitely branches because there are different endings, but it's like you said, it's how is the player sort of making the choices that take them on those branches, I guess.
So they've got some minor branches, and maybe it's the ending, but the ending kind of you just get alternative endings from what you've done. But yeah, the choices. So a pass would be that there are a few interesting choices. So what are the interesting choices you think you're making here?
So I think I don't really understand what I'm doing in part. So I guess whether I pick up the artifacts affects the amount of drain, which is an important thing, I guess. And the artifact that I finally present to the god is important. But things like, for example, okay, if you take the short route, well, there are some where it's like, yeah, take the short route or the long route. But if you take the long route, everyone dies. So why would you take the long route?
Yeah. So,
like, it's things like, yeah, I guess that's the thing. It's like this is a choice, but it's not necessarily an interesting choice because it's a case of, well, if I take the long route, it's harder and it's longer and it causes everyone to die.
So I mean, a poor here would be few interesting choices. Player agency is problematic, right? And mainly it's a lot of confusion because you don't really know what's going on.
Choice, what am I doing? Yeah.
And that's kind of what makes it problematic. So I think they've tried to put these choices in there. And again, partly they've taken on board. So we talk a lot about these diegetic choices, and we say generally diegetic choices are good, right? But one of the disadvantages of diegetic choices is that the player doesn't necessarily know that they're making a choice, right? So what tends to happen here is you very often do something because you're blundering around, and then you realise it has consequences afterwards. So yes, you made a choice, but it wasn't an active choice, right?
Also, in terms of meaningful play, these things do just push me into a corner and then I can't do anything about it. So that's a bit of a pain.
So I think kind of for the quality of choices, I think we're probably we arguably are at the poor level where there are a few interesting choices. Player agency is problematic, and I think if you were being generous, you might push it up so it's halfway between that and a pass. And so, well, actually, there are some interesting choices. It's just they're not signposted well within the game, so you don't necessarily know you're making them. Yeah, that might be one way to think about it.
Also, this attack doesn't actually seem to do anything.
Okay, let's go on and talk about the design. So that's the techniques that they've used and the poetics. So do the narrative and gameplay complement each other? What's the pacing like? What are the game writing techniques?
Okay.
So what do we think?
So in terms of techniques, we have the dialogue between all the different NPC characters, and we have the final cutscene, which sort of fades in different images to give you like a nice little epilogue. So I think that bit's done nicely.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think kind of so in terms of techniques, good is use of more than one game writing technique. They definitely got that. And an excellent would be appropriate and consistent use of more than one game writing technique. So I wouldn't say it's a appropriate and consistent. They're kind of, I mean, you know, you certainly get, they've used it appropriately in terms of you get the cutscenes for the ending, essentially. You get kind of the dialogues for in-game stuff. So that kind of, I think, fits.
Yeah, I think the big text dump at the start could have maybe done in a better way. Maybe with a similar sort of cutscene.
So maybe halfway between the two, right? So what about pacing? So pacing of the game.
I think this is kind of the problem, and again it goes back to the agency thing, in that there isn't a clear sort of a clear path for the player to take. So we can sort of go to any of these three areas, which means, again, kind of the narrative paradox. It means the pacing is a bit flat or
unclear. Flat. It's basically where we are.
Yeah. So unclear or flat is that's at the pass level.
It's a pass.
And I think that's spot on, actually. What about the poetics here? Do the narrative and gameplay, do they support each other? Do they conflict? So
I understand the approach they've gone for, and this is partly, again, because I spoke to them while they were designing it. So they've gone for the whole look before you leap moral of the story. And that is why you can't throw away an item once you've picked it up. You have to be sure that you want to pick it up, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, yes, it is built into the mechanics of their game. How well it's supported by sort of the rest of the gameplay, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So good would be narrative and gameplay complement one another, and the key mechanics are in keeping with the themes of the story. And I agree. I think the design has that in it, but it's the execution of the design that's problematic. Satisfactory would be that the narrative and gameplay do not interfere with each other, but the key mechanics have little to do with the themes of the story, and it feels better than that. So maybe because of they've not quite executed what they intended, it's sort of halfway between the two.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Sure.
And that takes us to feedback. So give me a second. This is all buried in the text again, but I'll dig it out. Here we are. So one piece of feedback we were given was that players may find that they pick up an item only to find out it doesn't work as they thought. And that might not feel fair. So because of this, the item pickups were changed to require confirmation they were picked up, and a description would be shown before they confirm picking it up. So this is trying to give them some meaningful choices, I suppose. The drain value was left vague, as it didn't directly impact how the item was used. And having a vague drain value made the choice to pick up the item a more thoughtful one for the player. Not sure if that's true. And the other main piece of feedback was in regards to how item progression worked. Two main approaches: staggering items in linear fashion or allowing all items to collect from the beginning. The first style would help with pacing, so that's what we were just saying, would allow players to get used to one before the next. However, the latter option enforced the fable, as the players had to fully think through their item choices before they chose them. In the end, we decided on the method between the other two, where item batches were staggered, so the player needs to get used to the items they have and must choose which items from a batch of multiple items they want to take. I mean, I think you could have done something. So the way to give better pacing to this game would be to have a sort of a linear section at the beginning, where you kind of hit kind of key beats and told people the key bits of information they need to know. Then an open section where they're making the decisions about what items to get and how to build it, and then have a sort of a final climax where, not just making an offering, but maybe the offering takes you to some sort of spiritual realm or something where you have to, use your offering to defeat some monsters or whatever. So you can kind of build up the drama in that way. So I'm not entirely sure that they've managed to follow the advice about pacing particularly well. I do think the items thing mostly works, though. That they've given you the information about the items, so it becomes more of a choice, a meaningful choice.
It feels
so.
like
A satisfactory would be feedback was addressed and changes have been somewhat successful. A pass would be feedback was addressed but the changes had limited success. And
I think we're somewhat between the two of those.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I think one of them's been more successful than the other, hasn't it? So, yeah. Great. Okay. I think that's it for this game. So let's move on to the next one. Okay. So our next game is Quest for Life.
Brilliant. So again, nice little title screen, lovely background music, quite atmospheric.
Yeah, that's a very nice bit of pixel art, actually. Okay,
so
controls.
This is our tutorial, I guess. So we got left and right, shift thing, space to jump, left mouse click to attack.
Okay. Cough, cough. Your dad is very sick. We don't have enough medication. Is there anything I can do to help Dad? A magical flower. There's always a magical flower.
It is, isn't it?
That I'm going to go find it. Forest is a dark and dangerous place. All right.
Okay, so lovely establishing cutscene.
Cutscene.
So we got a bit of an integrated tutorial as well. Nice.
That is good, actually. Yeah. Oh, that's quite nice. Yeah. Oh, I love the look of it.
Space to jump, and then making sure we actually use the jump before. Ooh, that's a very bouncy cat.
That's a very big jump. Yeah, they've properly remembered their tutorial stuff, haven't they? That's good.
Left mouse button to stab in the facing direction, so I can.
Okay.
Slimes will attack you. If they turn purple as they charge for their attack.
Okay. There's a slime.
Bonk. Bonk. Yeah.
Oh, blimey. That's
Oh, I'm dead.
That's actually terrifying.
It's very hard to actually dodge.
Yes. Or in fact kill the slimes.
Yeah. Wow, that okay. It leaps across half of the screen. Okay, fine.
They're lethal.
Run away. I suspect I may end up running away from some of these slimes rather than killing them.
I think you will. Oh my! Oh, that was falling in the water.
I thought I was being devilishly clever there by tricking it into falling in the water, but no. Now I've got to deal with two of them.
And it's come out of the water. It's unexpected. Wow.
Okay, slime's dealt with.
So they only seem to damage you when they do that attacking maneuver.
Yeah.
If you bump into them, they don't seem to damage you.
The path above has more traces of slimes, but something red and regenerative may lay ahead.
Oh, so here we go. So again, remember some of the level design stuff?
Path on the bottom will guarantee you a safe and calm journey. You say that. There's two slimes on the bottom now.
Well, there is now, because you've... There you are.
See, the top path, much calmer.
Well, that's only because the slime fell off.
Well, I didn't design the level. Okay.
Right.
I didn't see anything red and regenerative.
No. Well, unless it's a different level they've taken you to.
Perhaps. Oof.
Oh, jeez. Lethal. I love the way they bring up the picture of your corpse just to make sure.
Just to really hammer it home. Ah, there was a heart up there.
Those slimes are terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
I'm just gonna sprint past all of them, I think. I have a feeling that sprinting past all of the slimes may have later consequences, though.
Yes.
So, but before we get there, shall we start talking about the presentation?
Yes, although you have just got to dialogue.
Yeah, of course I have.
Make you stronger. Okay.
Bright
green colour, a foul smell. Wow.
Always drink things given to you by strangers.
I think so. I think if you meet a strange creature in the forest who gives you a foul-smelling drink, you should quaff it at once.
I would be more suspicious if it smelled delicious.
Now, has it done anything to you?
Not that I can tell. Maybe I've got a stronger attack or something. Doesn't seem that way.
No. Okay, let's start going through. So, presentation. So information design, graphics, and audio. Audio is pretty good. You've got a little tune going on. You've got the sword sounds. Any other sound effects?
A particularly squelchy noise when the slimes are about to attack you. Yeah, it's.
Oh, yeah. There's one that's escaped. So I think the audio is so good would be complementary audio effects and music. That seems okay. Would you say they're particularly appealing? I mean, they're fine.
I would say they're getting towards appealing. Like, it's perhaps like a bit of a nitpick, but it's a shame it's just the Unity blue background behind the trees. But like in this one, for example, we've got a nice little cavern layer, cavern background type thing, which is quite nice.
Well, the graphics I think actually are pretty nice. So for audio, if we say maybe it's just above good, it's getting to the point of being appealing, and but graphics, they seem really good. So good would be consistent, effective graphics, definitely there, and I would say they are appealing. Actually, they're really nice.
Yeah.
Very atmospheric, clearly kind of denoting different zones or different levels.
Yeah, resolution on this particular background's a little bit low, but hey, it kind of leans into the pixel art of the rest of it, so it actually works together quite nicely.
Information design. So you've obviously got the hearts in the corner. You've also got you flash red, I think, when you take damage, and they flash red when they take damage.
Yep.
I think they also flash pink just before they attack.
Yep. Which is particularly handy. Their hitboxes are maybe feel a little bit off.
Right.
But
that's not a lot of information they're giving you, though. Is there anything else they should be giving us that we're not getting?
That's the thing. Like, I'm not sure what other information there is to show off. And this might be something we talk about in a moment with mechanics. They're kind of showing off all the information they need to, because there's a relatively small set of mechanics to work with at the minute, at least.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I want to read this sign. If you could stop. Nope. That.
Take this path if you don't like the cold. I think that one said on the right. So information design then. I think we can say certainly most information is shown. Probably all key information is shown. But maybe it's a bit restricted because there's not that much to show, right?
Yeah.
But they've done a pretty decent job, so I think that's kind of at the good level. Okay, what about meaningful play? Some mechanic controls and bugs.
So the mechanics, what have we got? We've got attacking slimes, we've got slimes that attack us, we've got the sort of, I guess, the fact that they have a little charge up thing, we've got some interaction with NPCs that give us strange smelling potions, but the consequences of that aren't actually immediately clear.
So perhaps that's part of the information design problem.
Yeah.
Because that's an effect that presumably so for example, when you died and restarted, is that effect still in place or not?
That's a very good question. I have no idea.
So I think that's kind of part of the issue. Okay. So we've got a set of consistent mechanics. That's a sort of satisfactory level. What about good would be complementary? Do they kind of work together? Entrance to a cave. You're going to go into a chilly breeze?
Well, it said slimes don't like the cold, and I don't like slime. That I was lied to. Maybe there's fewer slimes here.
Those. Yeah. Yeah, we've got a problem there where you jump up, you can see the top of the background image. Yeah. But still, it's sort of nice and thematically consistent. Again, so we've kind of gone from the forest to a sort of cold zone. Yes. So the mechanics are they? Do we think they're kind of complementary? Do they work well together?
Yes.
I mean, they're fine, but they don't necessarily combine enormously well. Again, it's partly to do because there's not that many mechanics to work with.
That's the thing. I think they do work complementary. It's just there's not a large enough set of them. Like, we could have different types of slimes that behave in different ways. We could have different types of attacks. We could have, I don't know, health potions that we have to decide when to use. All of those sorts of things that would add more of those combinations.
So I think we maybe put them halfway between satisfactory and good, just to reflect the fact that what's here does seem to work well. Controls. What's it like to move about?
Yeah, it's the controls themselves are kind of fine. The jump doesn't necessarily behave how I'd expect it to, but once you know that that's how it works, it feels sort of appropriate for the character. The main, I guess, issue I'm having while playing is... Oh, hang on, I've got a cutscene now. Is the interaction of like my movement and the slimes. So it feels like I should be able to dodge it because they're charging up and then attacking. And it feels like I can't dodge it as easily as I would expect to. No,
so normally in games like this, you are more maneuverable than the enemy, right?
Yeah.
But they just have that rush attack, which is very difficult to evade. Yeah. Are you going to take the crawly bugs, by the way? The crawly gloves?
Yeah, I'm getting a sense of maybe which fable they picked and which moral they're going for. So I already picked the mysterious potion. And I feel like with a lot of these sort of moral choice games, we're in for a penny, in for a pound at this point.
Go for it.
So let's take. You lose the ability to fight.
Oh.
Okay, that's an interesting. Well, I was going to say that's an interesting choice. We'll talk about exactly what I mean by that in a moment.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. So let's go back to the controls. So satisfactory would be a reasonable set of usable controls. I think they've got that. If it was going to be good, it would have to be smooth usable controls. So do you kind of feel that they're smooth, that you're able to combine them together and do interesting things? Or are you struggling?
The controls themselves I think are okay, but like I say, it's the sort of interaction between like my movement and the enemy movement. I'm getting the hang of it now because I'm not also trying to stab them, I think. Maybe halfway between the two.
Okay, that sounds fair. And bugs. So we've seen one or two sort of minor things, like the enemies getting trapped. Oh, what's he doing down the well?
Interesting.
Help me get out of this well. I'll give you this flower if you help me. Okay, well if that's the flower we want.
This is also the person that took away my ability to fight the slimes.
I said, does he have the magical flower? We're going to help him or not, do you reckon?
I'm very tempted to long live the king and push him in a well.
Go on then, say no. No.
No, I feel like we've gone all one way or all the other, so maybe we should keep trusting him for no reason and help him. See, this is the thing.
You're going the gullible route.
Kind of. It's... Well, I'll come back to this when we start talking about agency and choices. You chose to help out, he tricks you, you fall in the well and drown, so you don't get the flowers. Wow, that's pretty brutal epilogue, that.
God, it's like an EastEnders Christmas special.
The worst part is now I have to fight all those slimes again.
Well, you get on and do that while we talk about bugs. So the only thing I've seen, as I said, is the enemies going off screen a bit strangely, and that seems really minor, and it doesn't really affect the game too much. So maybe good is game is reasonably complex with infrequent minor bugs, and excellent is game is reasonably complex and no obvious bugs. So maybe just halfway between the two.
Yeah, it seems pretty reasonable. Oh yeah,
so it's a very minor thing, isn't it?
I totally forgot I could sprint as well.
Yeah. Is this like a dominant strategy here? Just run.
Looks like it. So I was working under the assumption that if we avoided all the slimes, there would be some sort of consequence for that. But It doesn't seem to be.
Not.
I think I can just sprint my way through the entire level.
So let's get to the kind of the actual brief, and in particular the story engine. So what we were looking for here was a narrative where what you did in the game world affected the story, and options you chose in the story world affected the game. So what do we think we've got in both of those directions?
Well, the thing is, the primary actions within the game world, so just the platforming, the killing slimes and things, doesn't seem to affect the outcome of the story. Oh well, the route we take possibly does, but that might just give us a different platforming level rather than changing the actual story.
Yes. So the obvious one I think is Meowtar the Blue, because you make a selection here.
So is that's a story choice that then affects the game in a...
So yes, yeah. So I think one of the problems they've got is that again there's not an awful lot of story, right?
There's a nice sort of prologue, a nicely done epilogue, but
that's a kind of a premise, right, and a denouement. But there's no story. There's no. So what makes it as a story is, if you like, sort of the narrative events that occur during the game, right? And the problem is that most of the narrative is a journey narrative. You're making your way through these spaces, with this very small bit where you interact with Meowtar and make these kind of decisions. So I think. So for how does the narrative impact the game world? They said it's things like, should you enter the cave, and if you choose yes, you get a different level, right? But I don't see that as a.
That's not affecting the story really in any way.
It's not really a narrative decision, right? That you're making there. And the other example they give is Meowtar, where you make him an offer, and if depending on what you do, so I think that probably does count, right? But it's quite a minor example. So in terms of story to game world, I think if we looked at a pass, would be sparse or minor examples of where the story impacts the game world, right? And I kind of think that's where we are, isn't it?
Potentially. So we've met somebody who's not Meowtar, I guess, because we didn't go through the snow cave. We went the other route this time.
Do you help the fox? Keep in mind it's a predator.
See, this feels like one of the game has already set me up to say, here's a choice, and if you pick the wrong one, we're just gonna screw you over because we can. So, sure. Oh, and then I get killed by a slime while in the cuts. Grumble.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's not great. So another minor bug. So maybe that comes back later. I don't know. So yeah, I think the story to game world is actually quite minor. What about game world to story?
Well, there isn't much, if any, that I can see. So, other than the route we take, whether we go via the cave or the jungle forest, whichever it was, means we get that fox event, which we didn't before, and we also got
their argument, right? So in their game notes, they say basically, you make a decision and then you get a different level, and that level has different events in it. So but again, it's not really decisions you're making in the narrative which are affecting the game world, right? You've kind of.
It's not like as I kind of imagined, if it was a case of Meowtar keeps a track of how many slimes you've killed or something, and based on that decides to help you because you're merciful, or doesn't because you're vengeful or whatever.
And I think what they've done there is they've got this thing where you make a decision about which level to play, and they're arguing that is both an example of the narrative impacting the game world, because they're saying making the decision impacts the game world because it changes the level, and then they're also saying exactly the same thing for game world impacting narrative. So by playing a different level, you end up having different events. and it's because that level selection or routes through the game space aren't really narrative decisions. Narrative decisions are dramatic. They're events that occur or interactions with characters. So as you said, I would imagine things like did you kill all the slimes would change the way that the characters react to you, for example. That's a good example. You make choices which affect the type of enemies that are present in the level, or the goal that you have within the level. These are all things which would affect the game world. So I think the example of Meowtar, make a decision and it changes your abilities in the game, that is an example. So for story to game world, that's an example. So I think that's a pass. For game world to story, I'm wondering if it's even a pass. I can't. What are you doing in the game world that's actually influencing the story?
I mean, yeah, you're like choosing the direction you go influences some of the story events you get. That is.
But that's like saying if you die, the story ends.
It's not quite, because you get a different conversation and you meet different NPCs if you choose to go one way or the other. Whether the player has any agency over that is something we'll talk about in a second, but it does technically have an impact on the ending. So for example, because I met that fox, I got the good ending, and if I'd gone a different way in the game, I wouldn't have got that. So it does definitely affect the outcome of the story, but... So
that sounds like it's similar to the other one. So it sounds like they're both at the kind of pass level then. Yeah. There's sort of sparse examples of them both.
So what? Just hypothetically, what would a poor be for gameplay to story?
So a poor would be some support for story elements, but the game world has no real impact on the story. And
I feel like maybe it's there, maybe it's halfway between the two.
Yeah. Well, let's put it halfway between the two, because we've been saying is it one or the other. So let's keep it simple for ourselves and put it halfway between. Agency. You've been trying to talk about this for pretty much the whole time you've been playing. So this is to do with the richness of the structure and the branches and the quality of the choices.
Yeah, how much control do we as the player have over the story? How interesting are the choices that we make? Yeah. And I think so there are a lot of choices, so we can choose which routes we take, whether we accept Meowtar's help, whether we help the fox or not.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would call them interesting choices, because we have such limited information to work with, and the consequences of those choices are not readily apparent anyway.
Yeah.
So for example, that first potion, I still don't know what happens if we drink that. And
no.
The only indication that the game gives is maybe it's a bad thing to drink it, is it says it smells bad. Whereas I haven't tried taking the flaming sword yet, so I might try that next. But for example, the gloves, where it's a case of, here are some warm gloves in this cold cave. Aha! Now you can't fight. You can't play a chunk of the game.
Yeah.
Like, luckily not a crucial part, but. Yeah. So this one potentially is a more interesting choice if it's going to work the way that I expect it to. So Flaming Sword does more damage, might hurt you as well. Maybe we go down to just having 2 hearts, but we do more damage, is the way that I imagine this working.
It seems sensible.
Oh no, we just lose the ability. So we get a super cool magical sword and lose the ability to fight.
Oh, okay.
So this is the thing. The thing that I had in my head was a much more interesting choice than that, because it's then you're giving the player decisions and considerations. It's like, do I want to be a glass cannon? Do I want to have more combat power at the risk of having less health? Do I think that I can use that? Like, am I skillful enough? Is it the style of play I enjoy? That whole kind of thing. But then just pulling the rug from under the player's feet, while maybe thematic to the thing that they're going for.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such an uninformed choice. I think kind of the second time you've had that first interaction. So, what would make it a more interesting choice? So it would be a more interesting choice if you perhaps had some clues as to Meowtar the Blue.
I mean,
what he was, and find some more evidence around the level, or
yeah. I mean, you're kind of given a hint in the dialogue. So with both the events that take away your combat ability, for the sword it says, "Oh, it looks very hot. Yeah. Maybe it'll hurt you." And for the gloves, it's like, "Oh, well, it's full of insects or whatever." Which again feels just a kind of contrived, really.
So there's two simultaneous problems, right? So one of the things we talk about in the sessions is choices and calculations. So what you have here is a pure calculation, right? If you take it, it's bad, and if you don't take it, it's good, right? Whereas actually your choices, you want them to be grey. So like you said, do I want to be a glass cannon, or do I want to be more of a kind of a balanced my abilities to be balanced? So that would be a grey choice. So that's the first thing, is that it's a very black and white choice. There's a right answer, right? And that's always bad. The second problem is that your choices should be informed, and you're not informed as to what the choice is. You don't really understand what the consequences are. And in fact, the game is playing on the fact that it's fooling you, but not in a particularly satisfying way, right? It's fooling you in the same way as, when a kid holds their hand out to shake your hand, and you go to take it, and then they whip it up to their nose and go nah, right? It's that kind of that's not being fooled in a satisfactory way, right? So I think you're right that the choices here are problematic. So a poor would be few interesting choices. Player agency is problematic. And a pass would be few interesting choices.
What do you? I'm wondering if this is a poor, or maybe halfway between a poor and a pass.
Yeah, I think the poor describes it pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
There's few interesting choices. Your agency is problematic because you're not really aware of what the consequences are, or you're not given. I mean, like you said, there's that little clue in the dialogue, but that's not really sufficient.
So yeah, on the one hand, like I can clearly see what they were aiming to do, but I think in the execution they've not quite pulled it off.
Yeah. I think, as you said, it would definitely have helped if the choice you were making was between two options that were viable, right?
And then that would tie back into the story engine as well, where your choices in the sort of narrative have a much clearer impact on the way that you're playing the game.
So what about the structure here? So this is a bit of a problem, because they've handed in their game notes and that's got a structure in it, but the resolution of the diagram is too bad for me to actually read what it says.
Oh dear.
Even though I've zoomed in on it, I might be able to make out bits of it. So you start off, then there's a choice square where you take the bottom part or the top path. Whichever way you go, you meet Meowtar the blue, which you then make a decision.
So that's the first choice with him is the bottle.
Yeah. And then you've got enter the cave. And if you do, you get the snow environment. If you don't, then you carry on. Both cases, you meet him for a second time.
And that time he can take away your combat ability. If you don't go in the cold route, you'll then meet the fox, which, as far as I can tell, is the only way that you can get a good ending of the game.
Yes.
And again, that's another reason why the agency is problematic, because you can totally lock yourself into a bad ending, as far as I can tell, by just taking the cold route instead of the hot route.
Yes, you're right. So in fact, you're no, that's not quite actually.
Oh.
So when you can take the cold route, meet Meowtar, then you don't take his gloves. Then it says you meet a snow boss, and that takes you back to the other side, where presumably you can help the animal or not, and then that's how you get. And if you help the animal, you get the good ending.
I did not see the animal the first time I went through the snowy route.
That's because you took the gloves.
Oh.
If you take the gloves, you don't go back. You have to resist the second. So there is a way across.
That doesn't make any. Like, the consequences of that don't really make any sense to me. But
no.
I will try it out to see what happens.
And I mean, they've got some nice bits in here. So they've got, like, there's a little false decision. So if you help the fox, then you have, are you going to help Meowtar or not? And you get a good ending whichever way you do. If you don't help the fox, then you have a final decision to help Meowtar, and only if you help him do you get a good ending. So
wait, what? So hang on. So if I help the fox and then help Meowtar, he tricks me and I fall in the well. If I don't help the fox and then help Meowtar, he doesn't trap me in the well.
So according to this, if you help the fox, you'll get a good ending, whatever. And if you don't help the fox, it then depends on whether you help Meowtar.
But that doesn't.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay. Anyway.
It's not. It's the logic of it, right? And it's very hard to see. So, but in terms of the structure, they do have several branching points, right? Which
yes,
good.
They do.
Excellent would be a number of branching points throughout the game.
So,
they are throughout the experience. You know, you've got
the impact of them on the narrative. So some of them have an impact on the narrative. Some of them, oh no, even the gloves one apparently also has an impact on the narrative. So there's the fox. So my feeling is that the richness of structure should definitely be at least the good level. You know, several branching points. Are they throughout the game? I mean, there are choices. There are choices throughout the game. So we've already talked about, maybe they're not the most interesting choices, and maybe the logic behind them is sometimes hard to follow. But they are throughout the game. But
the structure is there.
Yeah.
So I think actually that puts their, ironically, given that we gave them a poor for choices, they actually get an excellent for structure. So poetics is next. Do the narrative and gameplay support one another?
So this is interesting because originally I thought this was going to be... So we asked them to base these stories off of one of 3 fables. I initially thought this was going to be the eagle and the tortoise. So all about, getting everything you want ending up being a bad thing. And we kept getting offered all of these boons by the wizard that turned out to be bad. But now I'm thinking it's the
goat and the fox.
Goat and the fox, which is all about sort of not trusting help that's offered to you and also try not to get trapped in a well. So thematically, I can see the relation between it, but as we were sort of talking about with the choice and agency, we don't have the information to know whether to trust and.
Well, I mean, the problem here. Remember, this isn't about does the story have the theme? Because their story has that theme, right? That's fine. It's clearly we can identify it. The problem is, does the gameplay? So what are you actually doing, right? You're jumping around, killing slimes, and navigating platforms, right?
And like arguably, as part of play, making decisions about whether you trust this wizard or not. Like, I agree, the moment-to-moment gameplay has no relation to the themes that they're trying to bring across. Sort of the key story moments that they've sort of scattered across the game do have that kind of thing.
They do, yeah. And I suppose you could argue that the decisions you're making then have gameplay consequences, right? That's the only gameplay consequences we saw, which is what happens to your abilities and your weapons and so on. It's pretty tenuous.
It is a little bit. It's one of those things where if you decide to trust the Meowtar when you shouldn't, you only learn by trusting him and then realizing that you shouldn't. But if you refuse trusting him with the gloves, you then have to help him at the end to get the good ending.
Yes.
So that bit almost works against it.
Yeah. So satisfactory here would be that the narrative and gameplay don't interfere with one another, but the key mechanics have little to do with the themes of the story, right? And good would be that they complement one another. And just to finish off, poor would be that they're in conflict. Sorry, a pass would be that they're in conflict. So I don't think they're in conflict. There's nothing. I don't think there's anything here which is pushing in the other direction. And arguably, like you said, the key narrative choices are around that theme, but it doesn't really manifest in the ongoing gameplay. So maybe it's halfway between satisfactory and good.
Yes, perhaps. I think it's probably closer to the satisfactory.
So, because yeah, okay.
Just because some of those narrative moments,
because they can be in conflict, like you said. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so let's think about the techniques then. So this is pacing and the techniques for delivering the narrative. The techniques, they've got the little cutscenes. They're quite nice, actually.
Yep, they've got an introductory sort of cutscene. They've got a little sort of epilogue, showcase slideshow, sort of simple cutscene as well. That changes depending on your actions. That's a really nice touch. And then they have these moments of sort of dialogue within the game itself. So yeah, a number of different techniques that they're using, and I think they're using them quite well.
So good would be use of more than one game writing technique. So thumbs up, definitely doing that. Excellent would be appropriate and consistent use of more than one game writing technique. And actually, I think they're there as well, because they've chosen cutscenes for the premise and the denouement. They've got the dialogue for the ongoing stuff. They've used it consistently all through the game. So yeah, I would say probably excellent for techniques. Pacing is interesting. What do you think about the pacing?
So in terms of mechanical pacing, there are it's difficult to say. I was going to say it kind of ramps up a little bit, like there are more slimes and stuff, but
it's not much. But it looks to me like it's fairly flat, really.
Yeah, like there's no, so as we were sort of saying when we talked about the mechanics, you don't learn new abilities, there aren't different types of enemies to deal with, the levels sort of don't get much harder. Like there are some slightly trickier bits of platforming, but otherwise.
And in terms of the narrative, you also I don't think you get much there either. I mean, you do get a sort of ending, I suppose. But
we arguably get a slightly small climax where Meowtar is hanging over a well. It's a relatively dramatic moment, but there's not much lead up to it, and the resolution happens pretty much instantly afterwards.
Yes, yeah. So, I mean, a satisfactory for pacing would be some ascending pacing. And pass would be that the pacing is unclear or flat. I kind of feel it's unclear or flat.
It's closer to the pass side as well. So, like, if, for example, as we're sort of getting closer to the final level or something, we get a phone call from Mum saying, "Oh, your dad's getting worse. Please hurry."
Yeah.
Like that kind of again ups the narrative stakes a little bit. It increases the drama, increases the tension, makes us want to progress through the levels faster to get the good ending, kind of thing.
So. Lastly, we should look at their feedback. So the feedback we got was at that time the narrative of the game did not impact the game world, and the game world did not impact the narrative. Right, so kind of what we talked about quite a lot. What we did to improve this is to add decisions that had more significance impact on the game world, e.g. enter the cave decision. As for the game world impact on the narrative, we added the change in the environment setting, the alternative endings, and decision choices having an impact in the future. We also got advised not to have too many decision points, so we added normal levels with no decisions to balance the game out. So, I mean, we actually said that their decision points were really good, that they had them all through the game and they're very consistent, so that's fine.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they mean by, like, the cave changes the game world. Like, it's snowy, but it doesn't change the mechanics at all.
Yes.
And, like, in a sense, maybe it's, they're trying to do a bit of environmental storytelling by having the environment change, but it's not because of our actions within the game world. It's just, now we're in the snow level. So I can kind of see what they were going for, but I don't think it's necessarily had the...
So again, a pass would be that the feedback was addressed, but the changes have had limited success, and I kind of feel that's what we've got here. They've tried to do something about it, but they haven't really addressed the real problem. They've definitely made some movements. We talked about it quite a lot, but it feels at that place. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Limited success. Okay. Right. Well, I think was that our final game?
Yeah, that was our final game for this batch. So we will see you again soon for another video.
Thanks for watching.